Okay, so basically, Hendrik, we've just invited you along just to get a little bit of an update with the court case which ended on the 31st of May and what the final result was. I think the main thing I just want to say to everybody so they can understand that the judge has not made her ruling yet. So this is a sub judice situation and she's got to review everything. So if you can maybe just give us a really brief outline as to what are the main points you think she needs to consider or she will need to think about before she makes her final ruling.
Well, basically, Chris, the main things that need to be considered is all the submissions that was done by the various councils, being that of the liquidators, which was presented by Advocate Rudy van Rooyen. Then we had Mr. Henry Honeyball, who was represented by Mr. Andre Loots. Then we had Mr. Cecil Rowe and his team, who did not make much of a heads of argument. And then we had Ian, who did our heads of argument. So basically now the judge have to go and, after having listened to all the different councils, implement the South African law, meaning she have to go and look at the various pieces of legislation which they addressed in the heads of argument, as well as precedences, being previous courts' decisions that was made by the various high courts, the Constitutional Court, and even Supreme Court of Appeals. So based on that, she will then decide legally who was correct and who was wrong, or make a decision that further evidence are required. Remember, in this, it was an application, basically a motion application, meaning that the judge can decide that there might be pressing facts, which can either, instead of just continuing as it is, send it for oral evidence or for a complete trial. Okay. Now, what's very important, and I don't know if you saw in the media recently, is that we all know that Johan Steinberg has been found. He was arrested by the Brazilian authorities, and it's now being reported in the media that there's attempts to get him back to South Africa. So something like that might be very important, as when the judge decides that oral evidence are needed or that there must be a complete trial, then it might give the opportunity that Johan Steinberg can actually come and answer some questions in court. Because he's probably the only person with many answers to the questions that people do have. Okay. But just have to come back to the Judge de Wet. Remember, it was very voluminous, the court papers being thousands of papers, and the judge actually had to read through it, and she had to make notes and go and listen to the transcripts of the court case itself. And that might take some time before she can actually give a judgment. Okay. Now, what will happen once she gets to a judgment, she will inform the various parties to be present in court, and then she will deliver a judgment. And then also she will give reasons for a judgment. Because it cannot just be a one-sided decision. In South African law, if a judge do make a decision or give a verdict, reasons must be given as to why, which is based on South African law, as well as precedents of previous cases of similar matter that was before the various courts.
You alluded to Johan Steinberg. The obvious question that everybody would ask is there any idea by when he will be able to be brought back to South Africa to answer for these things, or is that very much up in the air at the moment?
No, that is a good question. Apparently, according to the media reports, Johan is fighting his extradition to South Africa. He's alleging that he did start a family in Brazil. I don't know of the further details per se, except that when he was apprehended, he was in the company of a female. And if you remember right, there was that big train robber in Britain, Mr. Biggs, who also fled to Brazil. Because Brazil do have legislation stating that if you've got a family or started a family in Brazil, then you cannot be extradited. So what he did, Mr. Biggs, he got himself a Brazilian wife and he got children in Brazil. And that's why he was able to get away from the British long arm of the law. So we will see how Johan Steinberg is treated, but I doubt if he already actually started a family. So I'm of the opinion the chances are very good that if all processes are followed, by the end of the year, Johan Steinberg might be back in South Africa.
Would it be reasonable to assume that the judge will hold her judgment until she knows what the position is with Johan Steinberg? Is that something she could take into consideration? Obviously, we don't know, but is that possible?
No, I doubt it, because the judge has to make a decision based on the evidence that was laid in court, being the heads of argument, as well as the submissions that was done by the various counsel. So she cannot go out of the scope that was presented to her. So she must make a decision on that was put in front of her, and make a decision on the facts that was put in front of her, based on a probability.
Okay. Do you feel that there are do you think that there are specific items that might stand out in the decision? As far as I know, there's a request before the court to have the liquidators removed from the case because they have been ineffectual. That is something that's before her at the moment. Is that correct?
Well, I'm sure that application will be heard by a different judge, firstly. And secondly, because it is sub judice, I cannot give my own view pertaining to that court case, unfortunately.
Okay, but was that not presented as something by Henry Honeyball and them that they removed the liquidators? Was that not read in court as well?
Yes, it was read in court, but there was also asked that the application for a Ponzi declaration be postponed pending the hearing of the removal of the liquidators. And the judge made the decision that she's not going to entertain it, and that's why they continued with the Ponzi application. So even if she was made aware of the application to remove the liquidators, it still cannot sway her to make a decision.
Okay.
As I said, she has to go with the facts that was put before. And just for the people internationally who's listening to this, the South African judicial system works quite different than countries like America, where you've got a jury system which assists the judge in making a decision. So in South Africa, the judge is the person who makes the decision, and based on facts that is given before, that is put before court, and the judge also has to give a reason for that decision. So unfortunately, for many people who might have that perception, South African law is based on the Roman Dutch system, which is totally different than many other countries in the world.
Okay. A question here, is it possible that she might refer this to oral evidence? Is there a possibility that she might say, well, look, I'd like further oral evidence in this, or this was not clear, or this situation needs to be clarified? Is that also a possibility that she might come up with?
Yes, Chris, it is a possibility, as it was also argued as such by some of the counsel that was present, who requested that it be referred to oral evidence.
Okay, so that request is before her as well as a ruling. Okay, thank you. Is there anything, I think obviously what everybody is going to say, when will we know? You know, that's the big thing that we think. And I think maybe you can say, when will we know? So my question is, when will we know?
That's a good question. It will be as soon as the judge have written a decision and based on all the facts. So that can take anything from, my guess is anything from between 1 month to 6 months.
Okay. Is there a possibility that she can be asked to sort of give an update as to a ruling date? Is that a possibility or not?
No, she would usually, once she's made a decision, then she will inform the parties when to appear before court and what date she will give a judgment on.
Okay. How long is that period normally? Let's say she decides today she's ready.
It depends.
Can that also be anything from a month to 6 months?
Yeah, it depends. Remember, Judge DeWet is an acting judge. So it means that it must be when she is scheduled still to be during a term as an acting judge. So yeah, there's a lot of factors that will determine it. And remember also in South Africa, we do have certain times when our court go into recess as well, except for urgent matters. So it's a good guess. Your guess is as good as mine.
Okay. Yolanda, your sound.
So her ruling will be whether it's a Ponzi scheme or not at this moment. And then to remove the liquidators, it will be, somebody will have to institute a further case for that.
No, the further case has been opened already. It is an application that has been brought on behalf of Mr. Henry Honeyball. Mm-hmm. So that case will be before court, but it will be heard by a different judge.
Yes, quite right. So she's currently only deciding on the Ponzi scheme.
That's correct. And if she's not, or if she decides to not grant it or grant it, or alternatively to put it on full trial or refer it for oral evidence.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay, so just in summary, there's three sort of main positions, not saying that you can't rule on other things, but there's sort of three main positions. Is this an illegal business practice, brackets, Ponzi scheme, that she needs to decide on? Should she refer it to further evidence? You mentioned...
declaring it illegal, and all transactions made with MTI being declared illegal as such.
Okay.
So but yes. she can also rule that it's not a Ponzi scheme, obviously.
Yes, it's up to the judge to decide it, and but she will give reasons as to why
Of
or why
course.
not
Okay.
she made her decisions.
Is there anything else that we've had queries about at this stage? I think everybody is saying, when will we know, but obviously when we will know, first of all, she needs to make her decision. Secondly, she needs to then call everybody back, and we don't know what the time periods on that will be and what the influences are on that. So that's where we are at the moment. Correct?
That's correct.
Okay. All right, thank you. I think we've covered it. Yolanda, have you got any other issues?
No, I think we have covered all the questions.
Okay. Hendrik, thank you very much for that, for all of that. Okay, that's really kind of you to give up your time to do this for us this evening. Thank you so much. Okay.
Okay, Chris.
you.
Okay, Yolanda. Have a good evening.
Thank you,
You
guys.
too.
bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.